Hi, good afternoon, good morning, everybody, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us today for our next webinar series, Must-Have CRM Features for Recruitment. My name is Lawrence Levy. I'm the president of Enrollment Rx. I'm also pleased to be joined by my colleague, Mark Farrell, senior implementation consultant. Hey, Mark.
Hello, Lawrence.
Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you all for joining us today. So to get started for today's session, as mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the important features of what we consider the recruitment functionality in the CRM system. And there's a lot that we could be talking about, but today we're going to focus on three particular areas. We're going to talk about what we call touch points. We're going to explain what those are. We're going to talk about communication management in recruitment, and we're going to talk about territory management in recruitment. So these are the three areas that we want to touch on. Again, there's much more that we could be speaking about, but these are three vital, critical areas of recruitment management from a CRM perspective. Now, when we talk about CRM for comprehensive enrollment management, as you may have seen on our previous sessions, we always talk about this slide here as major areas. On the left-hand side, we talk about recruitment, admissions, and events. And on the right, we speak about data communications and integration. And really, this encompasses all of the most important areas that make up that comprehensive enrollment management system. And all of the RFP questions that we've ever been asked, they really fall into one of these particular areas. And this is what we address as a full solution. But for today's session, we're going to focus on the top left around recruitment management. So to begin with recruitment, the first question we like to ask is, how are prospect records even created in the system? These are the 6 areas that we can think of where records are actually created. And to emphasize that point, we can't think of another area. So if somebody can, please let us know. But these are the 6 sources of how prospect records can be created in the CRM system. So if we look here on the top right, we look at events, an event registration. A prospect may come to an event form or to an event listing page, and that may be the first time they actually sign up in our system and input that information and register their contact information in our system. They also may come to a request for information form, some inquiry form on our website or some marketing landing page and submit their inquiry that way. Or they may go to the login page of the application and actually register to begin an application and start an application. Or, as it pertains to imports, maybe they filled out some centralized application like the Common application, and they indicated that our institution was a school they wanted to apply through the Common app. And so when we purchased that list and we imported that information into our system, so then we created a record for that prospect. So those are 4 examples of how a prospect record may be created in the system. Now, if one individual was to do all 4 of those things, if one person was to register for an open house and then later inquire through an inquiry form and then maybe start an application later and also maybe complete the Common application, we would not want to create 4 separate duplicate prospect records for that individual, of course. We want to know that that individual performed those 4 behaviors. So in order to accommodate that, we have developed what we call our touchpoint functionality. And with touchpoints, we are able to track all of those types of activities and track all of those types of recruitment sources. And because we're able to track that information, that actually allows us to generate reports like show us all of our applicants that inquired from the Facebook landing page, that also registered for an open house, that are applying to the business program, that also submitted the Common application, right? Those are the kinds of things that we are able to report on because we have this touch point functionality. So with that, I'm going to ask Mark to show us a deeper dive into what are touch points, Mark, and what can they actually do and how do they work?
Sure. Thanks, Lawrence. So you brought up a lot of good points, especially around the different ways information come into the CRM. So like you mentioned, we don't want to create a duplicate record every time somebody raises their hand or completes the same information multiple times through multiple forms. But it is very vital and it's very important to be able to know when somebody does that and when they submit their information more than once and where, in fact, that actually came from. And we accomplish this through being able to create touch points. So instead of creating a different contact for each one of those types of modes of transmission, we go ahead and have one contact, which is their main source of record, and then we append touch points every time they raise their hand or they fill out one of these forms, and we match that information to their existing contact. And like you said, there's plenty of different ways for it to come in. One of it could be here, like this is an open house registration for a visit or a campaign. Somebody wants to come on campus, they want to do something, they fill out a form that way. Another way might be through a request for information form that could live on your website or through marketing, something like that. Or this is like a portal registration. If somebody is going to create an account to register to start an application, most likely and hopefully they're putting in the same information across all these forms. So we're able to gather that information and be able to stick it on one contact so that it's only in the CRM once. So in this instance here, this is my student Mary, and we have a bunch of different apps or objects that they have. One of them here is this touch point. So here we can see Mary has 4 different touch points. One of the touch points, and you can see the difference by lead source. So here we have a common app. So Mary's information was on an import file that we potentially imported in from Common App Source. We also see RFI. So at some point, Mary went ahead and created a request for information. We have an event registration. She registered for one of our open houses. And then we call this stealth applicant. So she filled out an application and there is a portal user or there's an application tied to her account as well. So in all 4 of these instances, we can see, well, you can track a lot of information. Depending on the information that's on those particular forms, we can collect all of that, and then we can decide what we want to do with it, whether we want to just keep it and store it to be able to just look at, or we want to actually update other pieces. If we want to update, let's say their contact. So for example, here we see that she looked at the engineering program a few times while she was filling out forms, but at one point she may have thought about doing art and design. So we have a lot of flexibility with what we can do with this information. We can keep the original information. So the first time she submitted that form, that's the information we keep. Or as she completes subsequent forms, let's say the phone number changed, or let's say her program of interest changed, or something like that, we can decide based off of that source whether or not we want to update the information on her contact record or just leave her original information alone and then just store this other information so that it can be used and it can be reviewed, but we're not actually changing her main contact. So either way, it's great information to be able to have, because if I'm like a counselor or somebody who's reaching out to the student, I'd want to know, hey, I see you filled out 4 different forms. Like, to me, that's somebody who's very interested in either getting information, learning more about, the school. And I want to make sure that not only I call out the fact that I can see that she's done all of this, but also recognize that, yeah, this person is, very interested, and I should make sure I have a good effort getting a hold of her and making sure I answer all of her questions and seeing if, this program is the right thing for her.
So what you're showing us there is that each one of those lead sources, she has indicated her academic program, her term of interest. It appears that she's even changed her mind from time to time. And we're tracking that information. And because we have that information, then we're able to generate those kinds of reports on show us for Marcy's student all of the attempts of engagement that she tried to do every time she tried to raise her hand, so to speak, right? Where she tried to engage with us and inquire and do something with us that we considered important, that we wanted to track for reporting and metrics purposes. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Great. And then were you saying what happens when she changes her program or changes her term, or even if she provides any other bits of information as part of that inquiry, when she fills out that inquiry form or when she does register for an open house, in addition to things like program and term, which she is providing there, what if she provides anything else like a telephone number or mailing address?
Yeah.
Is she able to provide that? And if she provides something different, what do we do with that information? How do we treat any changes to the information that she's providing through those sources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anytime and every time of somebody fills out a form, the odds of the exact same questions being on each form is slim, right? You're going to have some forms that'll have a home phone and maybe a work phone. You'll have some forms that might have a mailing address, some don't. So either way, as somebody fills out that form, each source, so a source for, let's say, the Common App, for the RFI, for the event registration, each one of those is treated separately so that we could say, if somebody fills out this form and they add now a mobile number, we can look to see if there's a mobile number already on their contact. And if not, we can decide to either populate it, and or if there is a value there, we could set a rule to say, should we override it or should we leave it alone? So you can decide whether or not somebody filling out their phone number on an RFI form should be overwritten, let's say, if they fill out an event registration and that phone number is now different. So you can decide whether or not you want to just populate a blank field or overwrite an existing value depending on that source. And then as fields, that are collected on forms that aren't on any other form, and most likely they're going to be blank, you can always set it so that if that field is blank, then just populate this information onto their contact. But you have control over setting what information you want to just store on the touch point versus what information you want to actually populate onto either their contact or their application or some other object.
Excellent. So touch points really is the feature that we're able to use to give that full insight into all recruitment activities that really ultimately are generating those enrolled applications.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Mark. What we want to talk about next is communication management. And so when it comes to communications from a recruitment perspective, we really want to be mindful of two types of communications. We talk about marketing communications and we talk about transactional communications. So both are important to a CRM system and certainly for recruitment management. Transactional communication could be something as basic as, thank you, we've received your inquiry, or thank you, we've received your registration for the upcoming event, or maybe here's a reminder for the upcoming event, or even if they maybe submit documents as part of the application, we can confirm that we've received your essay in those types of transactional communications. Marketing communications are those types of communications where, as prospects or inquiries are being created in the system, we might want to be sending them into automated drip campaigns where we are depending on demographics and criteria. We might be sending them a series of marketing communications, and then as they click on those links or open those emails, they might then be sent subsequent communications. And if they don't open those links and click on those emails, so then we might be sending them different sets of communications. And of course, undergraduate versus graduate versus nursing versus business are all types of examples of where people would be receiving different types of automated marketing communications that we want to be regularly sending out from a recruitment perspective. So, of course, in a CRM system, we want to be able to support both. Mark, can you give us a few examples of common transactional communications that we have to support in recruitment, and then as well as give us examples of what marketing communications could look like?
Sure. So let's start with the transactional ones. So you touched on it briefly, but transactional communications, I consider basically anything that happens after an interaction. So you mentioned, like, if somebody fills out a form, you fill out the form, you hit submit, most likely you get a confirmation email that says, thank you for filling out the form. here's some next steps, here's what to expect, here's some contact info. If somebody registers for an event, at the end of their submission, they get an email that says, here's your event details, here's how you park, here's how you attend it, whether it's a webinar or in person, and you'll get your information that way. Or when you pay something online and you get a receipt at the end to let you know that the transaction went through, here's your receipt, here's a transaction ID. So we kind of separate the two as if an action was taken, then this kind of transactional email can go out. And I'm going to kind of stick to this event registration as an example because what I'm showing now is a campaign. And when you set up a campaign and somebody is registering for the campaign, at the end of that registration, there's a couple of things that can happen. Either one, it's open and they have a spot and it gets filled by you registering, and then you get an email that says, congratulations for registering, you're in, here's the information. Maybe the registration is full and there's a wait list, so you could potentially register, but now you're put on a wait list. So now that message that might get sent to you is going to be a little bit different. You're not really in yet, but we will add you to a wait list, and if a spot comes available, we will then put you into the event. Or maybe the event is full and then there's just no action needed. Now, if we talk about kind of those three different kind of scenarios, what's nice is if we look down at our emails, so we have these are kind of built in where when somebody registers for an event, we can send them this registration email. If they end up being put on a wait list, we can send them a different email. And we can even send them a reminder. So we can set, let's say, one day before the actual event, we want to send them a reminder email. So in all three of these scenarios, based off of actions that happen, these emails kind of fire and get sent. So we don't have to worry about somebody manually checking for something and then sending out emails. If a spot opens up if a seat opens up in one of the events, the first person from the wait list would get bumped up, and then the email would automatically get sent out. A day before the event, everybody who's registered would get sent the reminder email. So it's a good way to kind of display and show a transactional email that happens here, specifically around events.
That's great. So, I mean, Mark, that's an example of where we have understood that there's a common use case, like in event management and event creation, where an event coordinator would be responsible for configuring those types of automated transactional communications that are going to go out around that event. And so in this case here, we've just made it, as you say, we've built it in, we've made it an included feature so that coordinator can go and configure those kinds of transactional communications in an automated fashion. What if somebody wanted to use the Salesforce platform from an automation perspective to send out other kinds of transactional communications using things like flows? Is that also something that we support and that our clients utilize from time to time?
Yeah, absolutely. In this example here, we'll send out the reminder email one day before. But if somebody wanted to send out multiple reminders, we can easily set up via Flow different, more than just this one. If you wanted to send out ones further back, further out, so to speak, we can use Flow to do that. And really, we can use Flow to send out kind of emails at any, for any kind of different scenario. But specifically around these kind of transactions, yeah, we can use Flow to supplement and add on additional if this one is just not enough for their needs.
So that's how we support transactional communications, is both with some of our built-in functionality around those common use cases in recruitment that we know we need to address. And then beyond that, for anything else, we also always have the option to use Flow to automate those communications via Salesforce, those transactional communications.
Yep, correct.
All right, great. So that's a quick overview over some examples of what a transactional communication could include. And then as it pertains to marketing communications, Mark, I know that many of our clients, there's a lot of options on the Salesforce platform that support marketing communications. Of course, A lot of our clients use a marketing cloud account engagement, formerly known as Pardot, to power recruitment and admissions marketing automations. Can you give us a sense of what that kind of solution can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me show, and I'll zoom in on this in a minute. But when we talk about the marketing campaigns and we hear the word drip campaigns, things like that, I think of these as you have a entry criteria, and then you have an exit kind of criteria. So with these kind of campaigns, your goal is to drive, I guess, an action or an outcome, as opposed to a transaction is that action already happened. So in this instance here, let's take a look. This is an app started to submit process. So once the entry criteria is I started my application, my admissions status is started app. And then my end goal is for them to submit their application. So how are they going to go do this? Well, they could either just do it on their own without any coercion, or we could nudge them by this campaign. So if we look at this campaign, we have a start criteria, and then we have our first email that goes out. So we see you started your application. We really hope, you finish, but whatever by a certain time. Here's the link again. Please let us know if you have any questions, right? And after that first iteration, now we have rules. So we have this here. So after 5 days, I'm going to see, did they open my last email? If yes, then go down one path. If no, go down another path. So now I'm kind of building out a trajectory for them to hopefully still get them to my end goal, which is for them to submit their application. So if they open my email, right, through account engagement, now we're going to adjust their score because they're actually interacting, they're opening things. And then we're going to wait 5 days and we're going to send them a second email. And then after that, we're going to wait and see if they open it, yes or no. And we're going to go down this path until hopefully at some point they stop just opening emails and actually submit the application. Now, if their answer is no, right, then we're going to build a different path because now they're not even opening up the emails. So maybe I'm going to have different cadences, different language to get them to at least open the messages that I'm sending. Hopefully, if they open them, then they'll see the information is important and not just kind of disregard it. But this way you have the flexibility to be able to build this if-then kind of situation and hopefully be able to kind of figure out what's that secret formula for your particular school, for your particular part of this process that's going to get more people kind of engaged, getting them opening emails, reading them, and then ultimately, completing whatever the action is. And like I mentioned before, with these campaigns, you have a definitive start, and then the end is really, you hope that they actually submit. So if somebody gets the first email and then, oh yeah, let me go submit it, well, then they're done. They're out of this campaign. They're not going to receive any more emails about trying to submit their application. They're only going to stay in this. Either they never submit their app, or we get all the way down through this very end, which is however many days, 15 days, and they just do absolutely nothing. Then at some point you end this and say, okay, I'm not going to send them any more messages from this campaign. I might change their status, move them now into something else. But as far as this particular campaign goes, they have a definitive start and then a definitive end.
Excellent. So this is the similar tool. This is the tool that our clients would use for similar use cases where, here you're showing like an app started to submit use case, but it could be any use case. It could be the communication plan for all undergraduate inquiries, or it could be the communication plan for all graduate applicants or all nursing school applicants or what have you. And as you say, if something about them was to change, that would change the criteria for which communication drip campaign they should be associated with, the system would automatically make those updates as well.
Yeah, usually you'd probably see at least, well, maybe three campaigns. You'd have a campaign from when somebody submits their information as a lead until they actually start their application. So that could be one kind of hurdle is getting them from I'm interested to actually now I've started applying. Then we have the I started applying, but I haven't submitted everything to the school yet. So that could be another scenario there. And then the last scenario is, okay, maybe now I'm accepted and I don't start class for another month or so, but I want to keep them engaged with information. So I'm going to send them information until they actually log in or come to class, whatever my, my matriculation date or whatever my, the date is to say, okay, they're past the ad drop, whatever date that is. But now I've gone from an admitted student to now I'm actually in class, registered, paying, attending.
Excellent. All right, great, Mark. Thank you. So the next thing we wanted to touch on was what's sometimes called territory management in recruitment, but it is the idea that recruitment organizations, recruitment schools, recruiters and recruitment teams are typically going out to feeder schools and organizations. Undergraduate recruiters would very often be visiting high schools and making presentations and collecting inquiries from those high schools. Graduate recruiters could be visiting organizations or even colleges as well and doing something similar where they're making presentations and collecting inquiries. So we want to provide the functionality for these recruitment teams to be able to certainly manage all of those feeder schools and organizations, be able to track the pertinent details about those organizations, be able to see the visit history around those organizations. When were they last there? How did it go? When is their next visit scheduled? When are they plan to see that school again? As well as, of course, track all of the applicants that those schools are generating and the people who work at that school that we need to call probably each time we are scheduling a visit there. So there's a lot said there in all of that, right? There's a lot that we need to be managing when it comes to feeder schools and organizations and territory management. So with that, Mark, can you give us a sense of how we use our CRM to support that?
Sure. So if I'm a recruiter and I have a territory, I mean, obviously being able to manage what schools are in my territory, who are the contacts at those schools that I need to reach out to when I want to schedule a visit or a follow-up. And like you mentioned, are students from that school actually applying into college or university? So tracking all of that is obviously crucial. So what I'm showing here now is a school, a high school, and all the kind of different pieces of information that we can track on it so that you can be able to see all of these different things. First off is just the account itself. So in our world, Deerfield High School is an account, and I can keep all sorts of information, just the school itself, its address, phone number, the basics as far as where it is, zip codes, things like that. But then I also want to be able to track who are the people at that school that I would potentially work with, right? Are there counselors there that I need to meet with, associate or principals, vice principals, things like that? Who are any other key people that I need to reach out to before I come? And then ultimately, who are the potential interested students that I might have collected that said, yeah, I am kind of interested, in one thing or another, right? So you're able to track and collect all of that information here, which is great. Then you have all the different times you visit that school. So in this instance here, we have 3 visits, 2 of which have been completed, 1 of which is scheduled. And if I click into one of these visit records, now I get a little bit more information that's a little bit deeper than just the school information that was on my account record. Here, if I have, like in this instance, like if I had budget expenses to go visit them, right, I can track kind of expenses. I can see who my school's contact is. I can create fields or I can use existing fields to see about notes, right, about parking, where to go. I can even, for myself, put recommendations like, yes, I will do the school again, or no, I won't. Or maybe something's coming up at the school and you have to not go for, between a certain windows that aren't good for the school, right? Or certain hours, certain days of the week, things like that. It allows you to be able to track all of that, as well as how many people did you actually see, or how many students came and talked to you, for example. And you can get really, really granular, or you can be very, kind of high level. But either way, it gives you that flexibility to be able to say, all right, after I visited that school, do I want to go back there again? And then all the kind of pertinent information that I might need so that the next time I do go, I can look and be like, oh yeah, I remember now this, 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 this. So now it makes it a lot easier to be able to see all that information from visit to visit. And then also too, if your territories change and somebody is no longer with you anymore, and now the territory has to be assigned to somebody new, they have all this information to be able to like, oh, okay, so they went, Julian went there last time. They said it's nice. They'll definitely do it again. Let me reach out. Let me see, who do I need to reach out to? Let me make schedules, and it's very helpful to be able to have all that information in one spot. And then, like you mentioned, being able to see, did people from that school apply? So in this instance here, somebody fills out an application and they put Deerfield High School on their app as a school they attended. Well, now we have a way to track, okay, are students from Deerfield actually applying, actually, are we actually getting students from these high schools? So are these visits really worth it? Because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to get the students to apply. But this way now you can see exactly how many and who they are.
So there we can see the school visits, the previous school visits, the upcoming school visits. We can see any prospects or suspects, if you will, that we ever collected from that school. And then we can also even see any applications that ultimately were created from that institution.
Yep. And then another thing that you can do is like if we have a dashboard like this, you can create a dashboard and have your different reports that are tied to it so that you can have a one-stop shop of, okay, all of my schools, all of my visits, all of my applicants, all of my contacts, all of the things that are associated to me, I can see at a glance how I'm doing, what are my metrics, and be able to get all that information through reports as well.
And I mean, this screen that you're showing here is a good example of this is what a recruiter dashboard could look like, might look like to that recruiter. And then I know that their manager as well would be able to even see something similar, maybe on a team basis. They can see all of their team members and all of their scheduled visits and so on. So you really can parse out the data in a very personalized, flexible manner from a reporting and dashboard perspective.
Yep.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
So with that, give me 1 second here again for the last time. I'm going to take back the screen. That really concludes the 3 elements that we would want to talk about on today's session. Just for a reminder for anybody who's not aware, we have each Wednesday through March 13th, additional sessions coming up. The next one is on how to create the applicant portal on Salesforce. And then we have all the additional ones as well. You can please look at our website, enrollmentrx.com, to register for these events. And please, we'd love to have you join one or all of them. They all will be recorded and posted as well on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to open up for questions. The first question is, do touch points also update existing application data based on the additional data collected from that inquiry source? So yeah, I think that we did talk about this, but I think it's an important point to emphasize again, Mark. So if they do change their program or change their term, if they do indicate a new program or a term, something material, even beyond just their phone number or their address. So what are the considerations that we might need to think of in those kinds of updates, and how do our clients like to treat that? What are the scenarios?
Sure. So when we talk about updating applicant data, usually we don't want to update application data through like an RFI form, for example. If somebody filled out their application to the university and they put in their contact info, for example, and then registered for an event and used a different phone number. The contact info for the phone number itself, you might not want to have any contact info changed at a certain point. So if somebody already applied, you might not want them to change their phone number because now their phone number might be in your student information system, and you might not want to change, based on whatever their status is, you might not want to update that information just from a form. If they haven't really applied yet, and it's contact info, then yeah, you can update, you have the flexibility to update the contact info based off of the different sources. But most likely on like an RFI form or something like that, you're probably not going to ask application questions or questions that you'd want to actually update their application without them doing it through the application itself. So it's one of those things like most of the information that's going to be on one of these forms is going to be contact info, not really applicant data. But in situations like program, for example, we usually keep some fields on the contact as far as like their RFI interest or things like that. And then there's their official program, which is on their application. And that's usually going to be kind of tied to what they select when they actually fill out the app. But you can use other fields on the contact to kind of store those and then decide if you want to update an application or not.
Right. But to the extent that you are collecting any piece of data on any particular inquiry source, you can determine if you do want to just capture that piece of data on the touchpoint record, or if you also want to update any information on the corresponding contact or application record. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that gives really all of the flexibility that covers all those kinds of use cases that I think we've encountered from a recruitment client. All right, great. We have another question here, which is, do the recruiters see a report or dashboard of all of their upcoming visits? So I think you did just show that, and yeah, we absolutely do provide that. Recruiters have rich real-time reports and dashboards for all kinds of information, right? All of their applications, their upcoming events and visits, and so much more, right, Mark? But do you want to just talk about the kinds of reports and dashboards that recruiters might use and management may use?
Yeah, I mean, and you can really create as many reports as well, depending on your use case. But just on the simplest terms, yeah, you can have the reports based off of how many events or visits did I have. And then in that report, you can see by status how many are being completed, how many are scheduled. You can then pull in really any of the information that was on that record. How many students did I see? Will I go there again? Any of those types of pieces of information you can pull onto the report as well. You can also have reports for how many applicants do I have from this school, right? So you can see, and then you can also see the pipeline. So based off of the people that have entered, this school, what status are they in? How many are just an inquiry? How many have started an app? How many have submitted an app? How many have admitted? And this is kind of helpful too, because if a counselor or somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I've got a student, or hey, I'm just trying to follow up, so-and-so is interested in, applying, but maybe they haven't heard back from the school, or maybe they're just stuck somewhere in the process. It gives you visibility to say, oh yeah, I can see here that so-and-so is in this status, or they are having, whatever the last communication was. And it's really beneficial to be able to see kind of where people are in the process so that you could also provide information to kind of help them out as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, Mark, as we said, there's so much more when it comes to recruitment management that we could touch on, that we would touch on, but we realize that we can't do it all in one session. We'll remind you all, please, we have upcoming sessions on other topics around admissions and event management and data management and communication management and integration. So please do join us for the rest of those. But thanks again, Mark, and thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Lawrence. Bye, everybody.